the tabernacle in the wilderness. There is no doubt that much of the material recorded in the first 5 books of the Old Testament is derived from the initiatory rituals of the Egyptian mysteries. The priests of Isis were deeply versed in occult lore, and the Israelites during their captivity in Egypt learned from them many things concerning the significance of divinity and the manner of worshipping it. The authorship of the first 5 books of the Old Testament is generally attributed to Moses, but whether or not he was the actual writer of them is a matter of controversy. There is considerable evidence to substantiate the hypothesis that the Pentateuch was compiled at a much later date, from oral traditions. Concerning the authorship of these books, Thomas Iman makes a rather startling statement: "It is true that we have books which purport to be the books of Moses. So there are, or have been, books purporting to be written by Homer, Orpheus, Enoch, Mormon, and Junius. Yet the existence of the writings, and the belief that they were written by those whose name they bear, are no real evidences of the men or the genuineness of the works called by their names." It is true also that Moses is spoken of occasionally in the time of the early kings of Jerusalem. But it is clear that these passages are written by a late hand, and have been introduced into the places where they are found, with the definite intention of making it appear that the lawgiver was known to David and Solomon. See Ancient Faiths embodied in Ancient Names. While this noted scholar undoubtedly had much evidence to support his belief, it seems that this statement is somewhat too sweeping in character. It is apparently based upon the fact that Thomas Iman doubted the historical existence of Moses. This doubt was based upon the etymological resemblance of the word Moses to an ancient name for the sun. As the result of these deductions, Iman sought to prove that the lawgiver of Israel was merely another form of the omnipresent solar myth. While Iman demonstrated that by transposing 2 of the ancient letters the word Moses became Shema, an appellation of the celestial globe, he seems to have overlooked the fact that in the ancient mysteries the initiates were often given names synonymous with the sun, to symbolize the fact that the redemption and regeneration of the solar power had been achieved within their own natures. It is far more probable that the man whom we know as Moses was an accredited representative of the secret schools, laboring, as many other emissaries have labored, to instruct primitive races in the mysteries of their immortal souls. The true name of the grand old man of Israel who is known to history as Moses will probably never be ascertained. The word Moses, when understood in its esoteric Egyptian sense, means one who has been admitted into the mystery schools of wisdom and has gone forth to teach the ignorant concerning the will of the gods and the mysteries of life, as these mysteries were explained within the temples of Isis, Osiris, and Serapis. There is much controversy concerning the nationality of Moses. Some assert that he was a Jew, adopted and educated by the ruling house of Egypt. Others hold the opinion that he was a full-blooded Egyptian. A few even believe him to be identical with the immortal Hermes, for both these illustrious founders of religious systems received tablets from heaven supposedly written by the finger of God. The stories told concerning Moses, his discovery in the Ark of Bulrushes by Pharaoh's daughter, his adoption into the royal family of Egypt, and his later revolt against Egyptian autocracy coincide exactly with certain ceremonies through which the candidates of the Egyptian mysteries passed in their ritualistic wanderings in search of truth and understanding. The analogy can also be traced in the movements of the heavenly bodies. It is not strange that the erudite Moses, initiated in Egypt, should teach the Jews a philosophy containing the more important principles of Egyptian esotericism. The religions of Egypt at the time of the Israelitic captivity were far older than even the Egyptians themselves realized. Histories were difficult to compile in those days, and the Egyptians were satisfied to trace their race back to a mythological period when the gods themselves walked the earth and with their own power established the double empire of the Nile. The Egyptians did not dream that these divine progenitors were the Atlanteans, who, forced to abandon their 7 islands because of volcanic cataclysms, had immigrated into Egypt, then an Atlantean colony, where they established a great philosophic and literary center of civilization which was later to influence profoundly the religions and science of unnumbered races and peoples. Today Egypt is forgotten, but things Egyptian will always be remembered and revered. Egypt is dead, yet it lives immortal in its philosophy and architectonics. As Odin founded his mysteries in Scandinavia, and Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, So Moses, laboring with the then nomadic people of Israel's 12 tribes, established in the midst of them a secret and symbolic school, which has came to be known as the Tabernacle Mysteries. The Tabernacle of the Jews was merely a temple patterned after the temples of Egypt, and transportable to meet the needs of that roving disposition which the Israelites were famous. Every part of the tabernacle and the enclosure which surrounded it was symbolic of some great natural or philosophic truth. To the ignorant it was but a place to which to bring offerings and in which to make sacrifice. To the wise it was a temple of learning, sacred to the universal spirit of wisdom. While the greatest minds of the Jewish and Christian worlds have realized that the Bible is a book of allegories, few seem to have taken the trouble to investigate its symbols and parables. When Moses instituted his mysteries, he is said to have given to a chosen few initiates certain oral teachings which could never be written but were to be preserved from one generation to the next by word-of-mouth transmission. Those instructions were in the form of philosophical keys, by means of which the allegories were made to reveal their hidden significance. These mystic keys to their sacred writings were called by the Jews the Kabbalah. The modern world seems to have forgotten the existence of those unwritten teachings which explain satisfactorily the apparent contradictions of the written scriptures, nor does it remember that the pagans appointed their two-faced Janus as custodian of the key to the temple of wisdom. Janus has been metamorphosed into Saint Peter, so often symbolized as holding in his hand the key to the gate of heaven. The gold and silver keys of God's vicar on earth, the Pope, symbolizes the secret doctrine which, when properly understood, unlocks the treasure chest of the Christian and Jewish Kabbalah. The temples of Egyptian mysticism from which the tabernacle was copied were, according to their own priests, miniature representations of the universe. The solar system was always regarded as a great temple of initiation, which candidates entered through the gates of birth. After threading the tortuous passageways of earthly existence, they finally approached the veil of the great mystery, death, through whose gate they vanished back into the invisible world. Socrates subtly reminded his disciples that death was, in reality, the great initiation, for his last words were Credo, io coctu Asclepius. Will you remember to pay the debt? As the rooster was sacred to the gods and the sacrifice of this bird accompanied a candidate's introduction into the mysteries, Socrates implied that he was about to take his great initiation. Life is the great mystery, and only those who pass successfully through its tests and trials, interpreting them aright and extracting the essence of experience therefrom, achieve true understanding. Thus, the temples were built in the form of the world and their rituals were based upon life and its multitudinous problems. Nor only was the tabernacle itself patterned according to Egyptian mysticism. Its utensils were also of ancient and accepted form. The Ark of the Covenant itself was an adaptation of the Egyptian Ark, even to the kneeling figures upon its lid. Bas-reliefs on the Temple of Phil show Egyptian priests carrying their ark which closely resembled the Ark of the Jews, upon their shoulders by means of staves like those described in Exodus. Insert. The Ancient of Days. From Montfaucon's Antiquities. It is in this form that Jehovah is generally pictured by the Kabbalists. The drawing is intended to represent the demiurgus of the Greeks and Gnostics, called by the Greeks Zeus, the immortal mortal, and by the Hebrews Ihvh. Continued. The following description of the tabernacle and its priests is based upon the account of its construction and ceremonies recorded by Josephus in the third book of his Antiquities of the Jews. The Bible references are from a Breach's Bible famous for its rendering of the 7th verse of the 3rd chapter of Genesis, printed in London in 1599, and the quotations are reproduced in their original spelling and punctuation. The building of the tabernacle. Moses, speaking for Jehovah, the God of Israel, appointed 2 architects to superintend the building of the tabernacle. They were Bezaleel, the son of Uri, of the tribe of Judah, and Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. Their popularity was so great that they were also the unanimous choice of the people. When Jacob upon his deathbed blessed his son's seed Genesis XLIX, he assigned to each a symbol. The symbol of Judah was a lion. That of Dan a serpent or a bird, possibly an eagle.